Oh, that Zoom voice. It's so beautiful. Um, so welcome everybody. You know us, we're Irrational Labs. We've worked with hundreds of top organizations to bring that behavioral design approach into their processes. We're not superheroes, but if we were, our origin story starts at Google, where we founded the Behavioral Economics Business Unit. And we worked with over 25 teams to design and test interventions over a decade ago. Since then, we've published over 100 research studies. Many of them you can read at our case studies on the website. If someone could drop that in the chat, that would be very professional looking. And we've trained thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands of people in the artistic, magical, scientific, behavioral design, funness that is improving products all over the globe. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first, second, and third. We're Irrational Labs. This is what we do. Those are some of the companies we have worked with. Yes, but today we're going to look back on the year and be like, hey, what are some cool books we've read? And we have read some cool books. But first, take a second to soak in the color palette here. It looks quite fun. And you're wondering who picked Marcus Aurelius? I'm not going to tell you. That person's going to tell you. So you have to guess. Put in the chat who you think is going to talk about Marcus Aurelius, and you win absolutely nothing, but it'll be funny if you guess it. So here we go. We're going to take it away. Our first speaker, well, all our speakers today, we have Channing. I like to tell you where everybody is. So Channing is in Hawaii. Rosie is in London. Brad's mysterious. He's either in Vienna or Italy. Which one are you in, Brad? Oh, you're muted, Brad. I
I
know.
am in Vienna for the foreseeable future.
Okay, cool. Very chocolatey of you. Love it. He's wearing a very cool watch and eating chocolate while having coffee. And Pia, she is in Canada, but she is a native of Germany. So Brad and Pia are known to speak German together. And I think they say bad things about me, but I'm not positive because my German's terrible. And Magda, she's in Spain now, but she's originally from Poland. And I've been marveling at her incredible headshot because look at those curls, ladies and gentlemen. Look at those curls. All right. So everybody's going to talk about the books today. It's going to be rad. We've got people coming in this waiting room like you wouldn't believe. So Rosie in the UK, kick it off. Rosie is she's our community lead. So a lot of you that are in the boot camp have talked with Rosie, or if you're just hanging out in Slack. But she also is kind of our in-house behavioral scientist there that helps people tackling behavioral design challenges within the boot camp. She has many, many years of work in BSci in the UK and beyond, and she specializes in complex strategic challenges for charities, government departments, and major brands such as Google and Diageo, translating research and behavioral models into clear, actionable recommendations. So, Rosie, take it away. Tell us what's going on. Uh-oh, Rosie. That was a big, big lead up. Oh, there you are. Good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but we can't see
Hey!
you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Ryan. All right. Okay, let's talk about Careless People, a story of where I used to work. So if you've heard of this book, it might be because Facebook tried very hard to make sure that you didn't hear it. The Meta sued the author, Sarah Wynne Williams, the day after release. They got a gag order, so she couldn't promote her work. And in doing so, it shot straight to the top of New York Times. It's a bestseller now. A classic Streisand effect. So just a bit of context. So Sarah Wynne Williams, she was a former New Zealand diplomat. She was an international lawyer, and she joined Facebook in the hope of doing real good, and became head of global public policy. And she spent nearly a decade in the room with the likes of Zuckerberg, Sandberg, heads of state, negotiating Facebook's expansion into places like India, Myanmar, China. And this is a real insider account of the hyper-growth years between 2011 and 2017. So it's like the move fast and break things era. And it's all about sort of what happened in terms of geopolitics, human rights, elections, and the impact that Facebook had on it. So next slide, please. Um, so why this book out of everything else I've read this year? So firstly, credibility. So Sarah was actually there. This is all based on a primary source. She wasn't reconstructing events from news articles. She was on the private jets, in the negotiation rooms, and you really felt like it when you were reading it, that you were in that room with her. Secondly, this is a system story, not a villain story. So it would be very easy to read, for her to have written this book, and for you to read it as if like Mark Zuckerberg is evil and tech bros are terrible. But that's not what she does, and she's quite honest about her own complicity as well. Although some critics say not enough, but it shows how the environment, the pace, the incentives, the way responsibility got spread so thin, made carelessness almost just inevitable. And that's what makes it really useful for us, and what we'll show you in a bit. And third, it makes scale feel really real. So we throw that word around a lot, like we need to scale, this needs to work at scale. And this book really forces you to sit with what that actually means. Because when your product reaches 2 billion people, your design flaws don't just annoy users, but they can influence elections. And in Myanmar's case, fuel ethnic violence and genocides. And that chapter really stays with you. Next slide, please. So let's jump into some of the sort of key behavioural insights then. So I've pulled 4 out that have patterns across the whole book and kept coming up. So the first one's present bias. So urgency beats good judgment. So Facebook's Myanmar expansion is the clearest example. So there were warnings from NGOs, there were no Burmese translations, there were clear signs of harm. But internally, the pressure was, we need this launched this quarter, right now. And even small moments show it. So when a senior executive, he's jailed in South America, Zuckerberg's first reaction is, should we post about this? Rather than, is he safe? Not thinking about the repercussions on him. So the short term was always what won. They never thought about the long-term consequences. Secondly, social norms. So the culture, that was really interesting, says so much more than any sort of values deck. So there were so many unspoken rules, and that shaped everything. And you really saw it in terms of sort of parenting challenges. So as an example, when Sarah's baby cries during maternity leave, the advice is essentially hire help so work stays uninterrupted. And they just were not happy with the fact that despite the fact she was on maternity leave, that her baby was crying. There's also an example of where they're playing board games and the teams are quietly ensuring that Zuckerberg wins. And when Sarah challenges or actually beats him, she just assumes he must be cheating. And everyone just goes with the default. Oh, everyone just assumes that the default is that you let him win, and it's an unspoken rule. And these things look trivial, but they reveal a culture of deference and not challenging that power, which then spills into product and risk decisions. And then there's diffusion of responsibilities. Everyone thinks that everyone else is owning it. And Myanmar moderation was a brutal example. So they had 2 Burmese speakers covering an entire country who were in Dublin on European hours, letting sort of hate speech seep through. And when Sarah actually tried to escalate concerns, nobody owned it. So policy thought that ops owned it, ops thought that integrity owned it, they thought it was being outsourced. And essentially, it had a massive impact on the hate crime that was going on and violence. So no one had ownership, which is why it's so important to have ownership with those products. And cognitive overload was the other one. So too much information and no clarity. So teams were drowning in dashboards of dozens of critical metrics. And with everything being urgent, nothing truly guided any action. And even the briefings that were sent to Zuckerberg, they had to fit on a single phone screen in a text, and ideally no scrolling. So you can imagine what that's like, trying to get EU privacy policy through, or helping them understand other quite difficult, complex areas with geopolitics, all on one screen, which was pretty impossible. So when your environment is built for speed and to do things now and to get things done straight away, you get very shallow decisions. And we really saw that across the book. So when the environment makes the careless choice the easiest choice, it then becomes the norm. Okay, so next slide, please. So just running through some quick sort of behavioural insights there. If you're sitting here thinking that's cool, that's kind of depressing, what can I do about this? Here are some things. Here are 5 principles I've pulled out that we can do for product teams to make things make them as unlike this as possible. So make the best behaviour the easiest behaviour. So design the flows. Design the flow so the responsible, high quality action is the default or simplest path. So at Facebook, the fast path was ship now, fix later. And that was always the one that was won, because it was the one that supported the workflow. And raising concerns meant extra steps, more meetings, more political pain. So if the fast route and the careful route is the same, you don't have to rely on one person being the hero and trying to sort of work through it. Make ownership unmissable. So ambiguous responsibility creates blind spots, essentially. And in the Myanmar moderation story, no one could point to a single person who owned that risk, which is quite mind-blowing given its seriousness. And then that fell in the cracks between the teams. So for your product, ask, for every high-stakes decision or metric, can you name a human who owns it? And does everyone else know that person, who that person is as well? Thirdly, reduce the cognitive overload. This is a big one. So people can't act on what they can't process. So if your dashboards look like a cockpit on a 747, your team will either ignore them or cherry pick whatever supports what they already want to do, or whatever feels easiest. So fewer KPIs, clearer priorities, obvious next steps. That's not just sort of nice UX for your colleagues, it's actually a safety mechanism for many things, particularly with Facebook. Fourth, design for human limits, not ideal users. So just assume that your users and your team they're rushed, they're distracted, they're tired, they're juggling Slack, their emails, even small humans. And one of the wildest moments in the book is Sarah's literally typing a memo on her laptop while she's in hospital in labour, and she has a really traumatic labour, yet no one seems to be bothered by it. And it just felt, she admits it felt normal that she just had to be working whilst having contractions. And that's how deep the culture was, that you always had to be on. So if your product or your internal processes only work when people are fully focused and calm, they're going to break in the real world. So designing for human limits. And finally, aligning incentives with long-term good decisions. Sorry, Ryan. People follow what gets measured, rewarded, and praised. And in Facebook's case, growth metrics trumped everything. Launch dates mattered more than guardrails. Safety concerns didn't ladder up into visible OKRs. They always got lost. So if all your metrics are short term, don't be surprised when your team optimizes for short term wins at the cost of long term trust. And that's very much just the present bias that we have within us. So in short, we need to design the environment so the good behavior is really easy and not relying on vigilance. And I just want to ground that in a quick example of some Irrational Lab work in this kind of anti-Facebook story, if you like. So we worked with TikTok on the problem of misinformation. So specifically, people were sharing videos that had been flagged as potentially misleading in a couple of seconds. Sharing was effortless and reflection was not. And the goal was not to punish people or shame them, but it was to introduce this tiny pause, enough space for some system two thinking without sort of tanking the engagement either. So we added a behavioural warning sign before you could share any flagged content, and we introduced a subtle delay to interrupt that autopilot sort of tap, share pattern, and gave some next steps of sort of learning more or going back so the user never felt stuck. And we chose language that reduced that reactance. So, are you sure you want to send this rather than don't share this? So very sort of that reflective system too. And the behavioural insight was this sharing was the path of least resistance. So if we made the careful choice slightly easier, that careless choice the careful choice then was much more automatic. So we could shift the behaviour by changing the default of the choice. And it works. That small design change reduced shares of flagged misinformation by 24%, with no overall drop in engagement. So that's the same principle for careless people, just pointed in a different direction. Instead of making carelessness easy, we made care a little bit easier. So in terms of what your product team can learn, I leave with you with 5 sort of questions to take back to your own team or product. And you don't have to answer these out loud, but just think about them. So where in your product is the careless choice always the easiest choice? And what would it take to flip that? If something went wrong tomorrow, would everyone know who owns the decision to fix it? Or would people assume someone else is handling it? What are you measuring that might be encouraging short-term wins at the cost of long-term trust? Are your processes designed for your team on their best day or their most distracted, overloaded, under pressure day? And where are you moving fast because it's right? And where are you moving fast because slowing down would be politically or challenging or uncomfortable? So final slide, something to sort of, if you remember anything, carelessness within organisations is never really a personal flaw. It's all about the environment. It's a design flaw. And when something goes wrong, the instinct is often like, who messed up? But a better question is, what about our environment made that mistake likely, and how do we change that? So I leave that with you as a few questions to have a think about. Is the behavioral design all about the environment?
Oh, that's excellent, Rosie. Thank you so much. If you could give Rosie some love in the chat, please, that would be spectacular. Team, I can't shift out of this window without losing the slide presentation for the audience. So if we could get that TikTok case study link in the chat, that would be great as well. And to everybody, just so you know, I am not in labor right now. So that's good. We can continue. You can all rest assured that I am emceeing at the optimal level. With that, Channing, he's our chief strategy officer. Yeah, he's got a doctoral degree in managerial economics from UC Davis. But what? Oh no, that's his. I'm sorry, that's his BS. I was reading wrong, and his PhD's from University of Hawaii. But let's just and he did some postdoc work at Princeton, but whatever. And he was the CEO of Bucero. But like, it's not about Channing really. It's about what Channing read, right, Channing?
Right. Next slide. We'll talk about the book that I read that I liked this year, which is called Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara, who is an author and also ran the restaurant 11 Madison Park. And he kind of took it from a very good but not great restaurant to the number one restaurant in the world. Also, if you guys have watched the TV show The Bear, which is one of my favorite shows in the last 5 years, he was one of the advisors and helped kind of bring that realism to the kitchen. And so a kind of multi hyphenate chef author TV show advisor. But what is Unreasonable Hospitality about? I think the central real thesis about this is kind of like the idea that when things are so commoditized, your advantage is how you make people feel. So emotions really matter. And so he calls this like unreasonable hospitality because the little gestures that don't make obvious financial sense make the whole difference in their rise from being a very good but not great restaurant to the number one restaurant. So instead of asking what's like the minimum service we can provide, you really want to think about what's one way to give someone way more than they expect in a way that they're just never going to forget. So in the next slide, there's kind of two things that really stood out to me about this book and why I would encourage you guys to read it, especially for the product world. The first one is the idea of hospitality versus service. So service is doing the thing that people expect correctly, and hospitality is the way to make people feel cared for, to take that extra level. And so this is that idea that maybe your product or your service is good and it's efficient and it works as expected, but it might not be that extra thing that stands out emotionally, that gives you warmth, personalization, some kind of safety or some kind of connection. So that's the first thing that really stood out to me is how much care these restaurateurs went to making their guests not just make sure their food was on time and delicious, but that extra little grace note to make it really special. And then the second thing is how did they do that? They really focus on the 95-5 rule or kind of foolish generosity, which meant that they spent 95% of their time or 95% of their effort was really buttoned up. They made sure that they were tracking every cost, they were hyper efficient with it so that they could spend a 20th of their budget just doing absolutely crazy things. And if you read the book, they do crazy things like setting up a beach in the back and running around to go get someone a hot dog from New York. And so there's a lot of these like little stories again that if you've watched The Bear, you can see where that the inspiration came from. But they would spend money extremely kind of quote unquote foolishly, and they could only do that because they had the rest of the house buttoned up. Next slide, Ryan. Oh, backslide. This slide. Yeah. So what can you kind of take from this if you're thinking about how to build unreasonable hospitality into your product? I think the two that I'll point out here, and you can read the other ones as I go, is a kind of data is listening. One of the things that they did in the book is they had these people called dream weavers who it was their sole job to think about opportunities to make people's experiences just delightful, right? So they would listen during the conversation, they would take notes during a reservation booking to understand like how important is this event to them, what's going on in their life to make that happen. And in the product world, we might not be able to ask our customers all of those things, but we certainly get a lot of what we're calling now exhaust from the usage. So we can know a lot about our customers, and we should think about ways to turn those moments into delight. And then the second one is this idea of peak end rule. So this is a very popular behavioral science term that people are really salient moments about the peak of an experience and the end of it. And so rather than trying to make everything just a little bit better, which they're trying to do, you want to pick one moment to make really, really special and anchor your experience around that one moment. And so a lot of times it is hard to make everything 1% better. It takes a lot of optimization, but just to make one part exceptional could really be the focus and the unlock to making your product really sticky and successful. Okay, next slide. So I want to show you two examples that I found of unreasonable hospitality that's happened in tech that we can also model our experiences around. So the first one is Chewy. So what they do is, they actually do pretty unreasonable things. If you don't know Chewy, they're like an Amazon, but for pet food. But they had a campaign recent in the past where they would actually send real oil paintings of people's pets to them. And when pets die or pass away, they send flowers to the owners and they refund unused bags of food. And you can imagine that this is really not financially sustainable at scale, but it is because they have all of the other operations buttoned up. And what it does is it creates loyal lifetime customers. It really shows that they're being unreasonably hospitable to their clients. And then the second one is Superhuman. So Superhuman's an email service. What they do is actually it's a good example of how they're adding friction to the process to make people feel special. So it's an email service, right, that like lives on top of Gmail, but to actually be a part of it in the past, you had to have a 30-minute consultation with a superhuman specialist that would show you how to get the most out of the workflow. That seems insane from a customer acquisition or funnel standpoint, but what it actually did was it allowed people to feel like they're insiders and feel really special about the experience that they had, and it really boosted conversion. Okay, next slide. There's a case study here that I actually won't go into, but it's with Belong Health. We can put the link in the chat as well. But it was a project where they didn't have a lot of they weren't getting a lot of conversion or take up of their healthcare products, and we went in and redesigned things and created these kind of unreasonable, hospitable notes, such as postcards, redesigned their scripts, and did a lot of work to make sure that people felt heard. We really tapped into that emotional aspect of it. Okay. And I think that's it for me. That's not mine, that's Rosie's. So you can move on. Yeah. And if you can remember one thing, it's that emotion matters, which is funny because probably going to talk about stoicism next. But emotion really matters in your product experience. Thanks.
Nicely done. Well, let's take all the emotion out of the equation and pass it to our resident humorless person in Vienna. No, I'm kidding. Meet Brad. He's our director of marketing at Irrational Labs and really a brilliant, wonderful human. I don't want to talk too much about Brad because he actually wants to talk about Marcus Aurelius, but he's a wonderful guy. If you ever want to know what the engine is behind our LinkedIn posting, that's Brad. If you don't follow us on LinkedIn, follow us. That'll make Brad happy. Brad, take it away.
Okay, so everyone, show of hands, raise your hand if you're going to die. I'm going to raise both hands. And now raise your hand.
I told you
Right.
he'd go all
Yeah.
in.
And now raise your hand if your users are also going to die. No, not bad. Show of hands. Okay. So now that we got that out of the way, this is the only book on today's list that was not actually meant to be a book. Marcus Aurelius, the author, was the emperor of Rome, probably the most powerful person on earth at the time, and he spent his nights writing private notes to himself about how to not lose his mind. He called these notes to myself, and we call them meditations. This book, and he wrote them while running an empire, fighting wars, watching plagues kill millions of people. This guy knew he was going to die. He designed his thinking around that fact. And so you're probably wondering, like, why this weird book choice? I think I chose it because not only because it's like the only book that I read last year, had a very weird year, but because I think it says something that product people need to hear, and it's not complicated. Your users are not lazy, they're mortal. They're going to die. And before that happens, they're going to get distracted, overwhelmed, interrupted. They're going to be confused, just like you, just like me, just like Marcus Aurelius running an empire. And so instead of asking, why don't users engage more? We should be asking, given how little time and attention they actually have, what are we going to do to make the right action, or as we say at Irrational Labs, the key behavior, obvious for them and easy for them? Yeah, next slide, Ryan. And so this is different from product strategy frameworks that you might be familiar with. This book, this guy was trying to survive psychologically in a world of constant pressure, incomplete information, and really high stakes decisions, which probably sounds familiar to most of us. So it's basically a manual for making decisions under pressure, and two ideas have really stuck with me. And these are like more human ideas. So the first thing is like we worry a lot about making the right decisions, but most of what we worry about, it doesn't matter. Marcus, he writes about this constantly. He says basically you should strip away the noise and ask yourself questions like what's actually happening? What do I actually control of the situation? I can't control what's happening, but I can control how I react to it. And like what's the next right action to take? And really, those are the key questions, and everything else is just a distraction. And then the second thing that really stands out is like we should act now because there really is no later. He talks about death a lot in the book, as I've alluded to, and he says that people who die young or die early, and those who die after a long life, they actually have the same loss because there's really only the present, and if you don't live in the present, you're not alive anyway. And once you've lost the present, there's no you to suffer the loss, and so you have to act now. And really, if to apply this through a behavioral science lens, it's like if users are not going to do something now while you have their attention, while they have the moment, then they're probably not going to do it, and we should design for that accordingly. So next slide, Ryan. Yeah, and so let's connect this to the Stoic philosophy back to behavioral science. Like every concept on this slide is something that Marcus Aurelius would have recognized, even if he didn't have the vocabulary and actually didn't spoke Latin. Um, the first is like defaults do most of the work. Marcus, he knew that willpower is finite. People don't change behavior through strength of character, and information just doesn't change behavior. That's just not how it works. Um, and so we have to design the environment so that the right choice is the easy choice. In behavioral science, we talk about default effects and status quo bias. And second, too many choices is actually no choice. Marcus, he didn't have a prioritization framework. He just asked, like, is this essential? And if it's not essential, ignore it. Like, so when you give users 12 options, you've actually given them a decision problem, not a feature. Third, ambiguity kills momentum. When users don't know what's happening or what to do next, they hesitate, they bounce. And so that's not what you want, obviously. Um, and it's a world of limited time. And so clear next steps are going to beat clever next steps. You need to make the next step really obvious to people, make it easy for them to take it. And finally, friction is a design lever. The Stoics, they talk about the obstacle being the way. Obstacles are opportunities, but they also knew that the right action is hard and the wrong action is easy. And given, the if the wrong action is easy, most people will do the wrong action. This is just basic human psychology. So really, as a product designer, your job is to make the right action easier. So next slide, Ryan. Yeah, so how do you actually design for users who have like not much time and limited attention? First is to make the next step obvious, as I've already mentioned. So don't make people figure out the workflow. Don't make them jump through hoops to do the thing they came to do. Just show them the thing and let them do it. Two, say what's happening in plain language. We talk a lot about plain language at Irrational Labs. Especially when something is not working or failing. Stoics don't beat around the bush or use spin. Marcus Aurelius would state the thing clearly and move on. And you should do that with your users. Your product should really strive to say the thing and not obscure it for users. Three, reduce decisions at the point of action. This is a tough one. Like this is not easy to design for, but you need to keep the choice set small because attention is low and time is limited. And like we can't control everything that happens to us or to our users, but we can control the choice architecture that enables the key behavior that we're looking for. And four, design for this moment. We don't expect people to come back and finish something later. So you have to put the key behavior in front of people right now and make it doable. Okay, next slide. Great. So what can your product learn? I'll just let these sit for a minute and see which ones resonate with you. I mean, Marcus Aurelius, I would say he ran an empire mostly by asking himself hard questions like this every night. This is what this book actually is a collection of this man's personal doubts committed to diary. And really, if you do this with your product, you're going to have a better product and your user is going to have a better experience if you're asking questions like this. So I would just advise everyone to strive to be more Marcus-like in your product life. Good. So next slide. So we've got a case study here that I wanted to connect this back to some work by Irrational Labs, and show how this looks in practice. We work with Lyft on this Women Plus Connect feature. And what it does is it lets women and non-binary drivers choose to be matched with other more women and non-binary riders. So, people that asked for this, it was a sought feature. It had good reviews, but only half of the people who were eligible were opting in. Why was this happening? Was it because all drivers are going to die? No, it's because drivers are busy. They're taking in a lot of information. There was a lot of choice overload. Everyone knew the feature existed or maybe had seen it, but they didn't. The path to enabling it felt really vague and low priority. It was kind of a case of like, oh, I'll do this later, right? But the insight from Marcus Aurelius would be there is no later. We act as if we have unlimited time, and this is why we waste time. Drivers may have been taking in some of this info, but it wasn't really driving them to act or to drive, pun intended. And so what did Irrational Labs do? We reframed the ask. We tested three behaviorally informed messages. There were three prompts that we tested. One was neutral. One was just like confirm settings. The other one used concreteness against a control group that received no message. And all three of these prompts were performed better than the control. So there was a between 83 and 173% lift compared to control. And the confirm settings prompt was the one that was really good. Like the original message was learn about Women Plus Connect. But this one, like asking someone to confirm their settings is basically you're asking them to pause and reflect on their choices. And this one got 173% more opt-ins than the control. And I think Marcus Aurelius would have been proud of that. And so, and the other thing I would just point out is that this concreteness message that we tested, it gave drivers a specific kind of when and why to make the feature benefits tangible to them. And this one had the fewest taps, fewest opt-ins, but it was actually the most successful at increasing overall app usage. And so there could be a trade-off between driving awareness of a new feature and then getting people to actually use it or getting them to use your product overall. So I think like good Stoics, we should note, make things easier for users, but we should also be thoughtful about what the essentials are that we actually want to drive. Okay, next. So if you remember one thing from this book, I would say it is your users aren't lazy, they're mortal, and you should design as such. And actually, there's one more thing I would leave you with. That is a quote from Marcus Aurelius. Death hangs over you, so while you live, while it is in your power, do good and be good. And I think that is great inspiration for us in our design work.
My gosh, Brad, the weight with you which you dropped in the middle of this presentation today, I can't even handle it. Maybe we will, Brad, live
Did it just
forever.
kill you? Did you almost die watching it?
I did. I almost went into rigor
A
mortis.
hundred stoic deaths. Yeah, yeah. Good.
On that note, everybody give Brad some love in the chat and bring on Pia, another one of our gifted behavioral scientists. Yes, Pia works with healthcare startups, financial services, and large healthcare systems where she's led all kinds of behavioral change work. And she's coming to us from Canada. She's done a lot of AI work. She is not AI, though her picture looks like it could be because it's so excellent. She's a real person with real insights. Pia, come on down. Tell us about your book.
Thanks, Ryan. Always a treat. Hopefully, I'll get to introduce you one day.
I know I can't. It horrifies me. If I ever get introduced by anybody, I'll probably just go on mute, like video mute. But anyways, moonwalk with us.
Yes, my top read of 2025 was Moonwalking with Einstein. And quick setup of the book is that the author Joshua Foer starts off as a totally average journalist who's covering the US Memory Championship. And after a year of training with these weird memory athletes, as he starts calling them himself, he actually wins this championship himself. And the main takeaway for me was that memory isn't a fixed talent. Good news, it's actually a trainable skill for all of us. And there are strategies that we can steal from these memory athletes to help us remember way more things than we think are possible. And same for our users as well. So two things that stood out to me in the book is number one, it makes memory feel surprisingly hackable. You go on this journey with Foer from having totally ordinary memory to being able to memorize a deck of cards in a minute and 40 seconds. I haven't personally tried it, but I might try this weekend. Everybody can report back how it goes. It sounds incredibly difficult. And along the way, you kind of realize that you don't have to be born with a special brain. It's really about certain techniques through which you encode information. And secondly, it blends science, history, and story in a really sticky way. You encounter these really quirky memory championship characters, some ancient Greek philosophers that Brad would love, some modern cognitive psychology, but it really doesn't feel like a textbook. It's fun to read and then kind of quietly upgrades your understanding and what you think about learning and expertise. There are 4 key behavioral takeaways that I noticed in the book. The first one is that encoding beats memory, or beats what we would consider good memory. So Fora wasn't born with a special brain, and he learns that forgetting is mostly an encoding problem. So these memory athletes actually don't store or try to remember raw cards or numbers. They turn them into these really weird, vivid, often ridiculous images that make it way easier to not forget them. For example, 3 different cards might turn into the image of himself, myself, moonwalking with Einstein, which is one of the images that led him to win the championship, and then also, of course, the title of this book. Number 2 is that structure and chunking make memory possible. So now, once you have these really quirky, vivid images, you still need to find a place to store them and to find them again. And the way we do that is through what they call memory palaces. It's this technique where he visualizes and walks through a place that he knows really well, for example, his childhood home. And along the way, he'll drop these vivid images that he created, like kind of on that route. And to be able to recall the list of items that he wanted to remember, he just walks back through that same place and finds them all in the same spot that he left it. So this structure kind of helps him turn a random list of items into a journey that is easier for the brain to remember. Number 3, cues and timing beat good intentions. There's a funny moment in the book where, with his newly upgraded memory, he decides to swear off of Google Calendar and emails and notes, and that backfires pretty terribly. He starts missing appointments immediately, and he realizes that that just doesn't work, because what he's trying to do is rely on his prospective memory, which is, our intention to remember something in the future, and that is really fragile. So without the right cue at the right time, even a memory champion will forget things. And number 4, it's deliberate practice that turns a talent into a skill. At one point, he hits a plateau on how quickly he can remember a deck of cards. And what he does is actually take a metronome and he times himself and forces himself to remember a card for every beat that drops on the metronome. In the beginning, that is really difficult and he makes mistakes and he fails. But over time, he gets better. And that's what we call deliberate practice, which includes structured reps, clear feedback, and really pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to get better at something. Next slide. Great. So now how do we take this out of the memory championship and into product design? The first recommendation is that we need to encode and not assume good memory in our users. So design flows that are really easy to encode by making things vivid, visual, really easy to remember. Can everybody raise their hands who looked at their Spotify Wrapped this week? I did. Who remembers the learning age that they were assigned? Maybe you can pop it in the chat. I'll share mine as well. Mine was 79, which was rather memorable because it's kind of, I don't know if I should be proud of it or not. I'm still figuring that out. I'm deciding it's a good thing. But
Brad was also 79, just so you know. Yeah, so you guys might need to go listen to music together.
I really am actually 79, so I felt like Spotify kind of cheated on that one.
That's hilarious. So yeah, Spotify Wrapped. I mean, I think all of us love Spotify Wrapped at Irrational Labs. Great example of how you make something really visual and interesting and easy to encode and remember. Number 2, build clear mental models and scaffolding. This one is pretty obvious, and I think most of us know this. We want to try and break complex behaviors into smaller chunks of tasks using things like checklists, progress bars, etc. But then we also want to try and reuse that structure that we've built across the product. So we're almost building a memory palace inside the product, and the user have an easy time navigating that instead of it feeling like a maze. Number 3, trigger actions at the right time. Unfortunately, we can't rely on the user to really remember things later. Instead, we have to attach key actions to those natural cues, whether it be a symptom, a paycheck, a calendar moment. And then from there on, we want to make the behavior as easy and quick to get to as possible. For example, the Apple Watch standing reminder is a great example of this. Apple doesn't send us an email at the end of the day reminding us that we should stand more. We get a buzzing on our wrist in the moment. And the behavior of standing up and moving around a little bit is quite accessible. It's not far to get there in the moment. Number 4, create deliberate practice loops. Unfortunately, we all love to build products that are really great for the user, but then we don't realize that they might need a little bit of help to learn how to use them in the most powerful way. So we can't assume that users will explore the full power of the product by themselves. We need to build these guided reps, right? We're seeing a lot of this in AI products, starting to give more guidance on what to do next. For example, in Google AI Studio, currently when the model is working for you, you might see a couple cards that suggest things that you can do next. That's basically deliberate practice built into your your UI. Next slide. Great. And so let me also tie this back to a quick case study. This one was an important one working for a large pharma company, and the goal was to increase cancer symptom loggings for patients between visits. The ask in itself seemed easy at first. We wanted cancer patients to fill out a weekly diary log, but instead, this actually becomes really difficult because what we're doing is relying on the perspective memory, exactly like when Foer tried to not use calendars and schedules to remind him of things. It's really hard for patients, especially going through chemo treatment at the end of the day, to think back and remember fatigue, pain, and the other symptoms they had. So what we did instead is redesign this product to work for how memory actually works. And we turned the framing of the behavior from a weekly check-in to log when you don't feel well in the moment. So the pain, the symptom in the moment really becomes the actual cue itself. And then we also designed the interface so you have some previously logged symptoms that are already available for you and categories to make it really, really easy to log. And what did this do? It increased the frequency and accuracy of symptoms that were logged. This was great both for clinicians because it gave them better data and for patients because they had a more supportive experience. And then next slide, I'll skip through this. You can look through this after. And if you remember one thing, forgetfulness isn't a user flaw, it's a design problem. And our job as people building products is not to hope that our users have perfect memories. Instead, we need to build products that remember with people and then nudge them at the right moment.
Oh, Pia, that was wunderbar, which is
Thank you.
German. So I remember that. So all the German I don't remember, it's not a user flaw. It's a design problem in my brain, which is great to know. So please give Pia some love in the chat for her wonderful, wonderful presentation. And may you all enter her memory palace. Or may she all be part of your memory palace. Have your own memory. Remember the things in the palace. Just work with it. Work with it. So we're saving the best for last, the last for best. That's right. Magda is one of our associate behavioral scientists here at Irrational Labs, and boy, is she a smart one. That's all I'm going to tell you. She got 2 master's degrees in the last year, and she's been working on some massive products with us in AI with big companies, and you're just going to have to trust us because we're running out of time. That she's awesome. So Magda, just be awesome. Can you do that?
I'm gonna try my best, Ryan. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. So we talked already about the fact that this week was a really great week of the year because Spotify Wrapped came out. And we're here all very excited about it, right? Like we love to investigate what were our listening patterns throughout the year and like what we were up to. We also forget some of it. But I started questioning myself. What if there was something like life wrapped? which comes out and tells you, hey, these are the weeks that you already lived. You did this and that during those weeks, and you have following weeks that you have left. Probably wouldn't be as fun in games as Spotify Wrapped, but who knows? So this is essentially the idea behind the book 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman. The premise is that if you're lucky and live to around 80, you get roughly 4,000 weeks in your life. That minus all the time you sleep and wait on the red light, stuck in traffic, I can keep going. But basically, that's it, 4,000 weeks. That's not that much. But I don't want to scare you. I actually came with a hopeful message. Ryan, can I have a next slide, please? So I chose this book because I really like how it helps us see limits in a little bit different light. So it frames life as 4,000 weeks, and in this way, life stops feeling as this endless thing, and instead we see it in a very concrete way and a very finite way, and it also makes our limits very visible. And once you see that our time is limited, it really changes how you look at many different things, starting from relationships, also projects that you engage with, hobbies, but also product design. And when reading this book, I think the part that really stood out to me the most was the way the book talks about scarcity of time. So instead of seeing scarcity as this scary thing, like we always want to run away and like try to find a way around it, it actually shows it in a hopeful way because it tells us, hey, because we cannot do everything, right? The things that we choose to do, these are the choices that make life meaningful and things meaningful. So I sat down with this idea and I was thinking about different experiences and products that we are surrounded with. And I realized that actually many of the products that we engage with don't really respect the fact that we have unlimited time. And this is what I want to talk about today. So what does it actually mean to design products that respect users' time, and how can we make better products? So first, we have to reframe time and effort into doable chunks. So instead of telling users, hey, here is the landing page, go ahead and explore it, and maybe you will find the thing that you want to do, you can tell them, okay, in those 3 quick steps, you can get the task done. And this way, they're going to be much more likely to actually start and finish the task you want them to do. And for example, Duolingo does that really well. You go into the app and then you have those little biteable lessons that you can quickly do. So you're like, okay, that's doable, that's fine. Second thing is making the trade-off visible. So users already have so much on their plates, right? So sometimes instead of just keep adding things for them, you should go ahead and help them drop some things or maybe finish some things. For example, yesterday I was cleaning my Gmail inbox, and I was drowning in all the emails, all the communication. And then I saw that there was this little unsubscribe button, like right on the main page, which allows you to, with one click, unsubscribe from different newsletters and ads. And this felt like such a saving for me. And this was just a small gesture, but it really respected my time. And then last is designing for scarce attention. This is something already Rosie talked about. You always have to assume that the users are busy, distracted. They might get interrupted. For example, great example for this is when you fill out a form. You don't want to spend all this time filling out a form only for it to happen that someone calls you. You get interrupted, and then you have to go back to it and start from scratch, right? So to summarize, we have to build products as if the users only had limited time in them, because they do. Could I please have another slide? And here we have a real example with a case study that we work on with One Medical. Long story short, the problem that we faced was that users were completing the onboarding, they were completing the sign up, they were signing up for the for the service. The service was basically helping you. It was like a primary care clinic where you could book appointments with doctors. So they were signing up, but after being like, already in the system, they were not booking appointments. So we looked closer into it, looked closer what could be the reason, and we found out that after signing up, the users ended up in like this like in this landing page where they have so many options they could choose from. And they were like probably also excited to explore it, but they didn't have the time. So, and they ended up just thinking, okay, I'll do this later and closing the tab. So what we did is we realized we really have to use this little time window we get. So when user has taken the time to sign up, we had this really brief window for them to engage further. So we reframed the next step as booking the appointment as this very simple, doable action. We asked them to choose their provider and choose the time. And we showed them just one recommended doctor and a few concrete time slots. And those relatively small change led to a big increase of 20% in bookings overall and 67% in bookings on the same day or the next day. And this brings me to some reflection question again. I'm gonna let you to maybe just screenshot it, think about those questions with your team. But I just want you to ask yourself, okay, if I hear that I have limited time and I'm the user and I open your product and I just want you to reflect, what would make you think, okay, no, there's no way I'm spending time on this. And this brings me to the message I want to leave you with, which is users' time and attention are incredibly limited, so products that win are the ones that protect them. So you don't want users to look back at their life wrapped and regret spending time with your product. And yeah, off we go.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. If you could give Magda some love. Oh, look at all those claps and hearts coming in. Oh my gosh. And Rosie's floating in hearts. So team, I want to look and just see, we did have the Q&A document. So I just want to see if we have a lot of questions over there before we dive into a quiz. So please hold, team. I'm just going to go there and see because I know people might have. Sharon, you have a question.
Yeah.
Ask away.
Yeah.
Ask away.
Oops. Yes. This is fantastic, first of all. And I loved the last book in the context of 4,000, is it weeks left?
4,000 weeks, correct.
Yes. And so I feel like I've read so many time management books or essays or articles. Was there anything specific in there that was so unexpected that you hadn't heard before that would be useful to us, not just inside of behavioral science or product, but for our life?
I think the main point the author makes, basically, he spent a lot of time writing a column in The Guardian, um, investigating all different productivity hacks. I think he used to be very obsessed with productivity hacks. You know, also he interviewed many productivity experts, but basically, at some point in his life, he took this huge turn when he realized this is all going to the wrong direction when we just get hyper productive and we kind of forget what is the actual meaningful thing we want to do. So I think this is a pretty much very against productivity book. And it just asks us to think and accept that we are not able to do it all and prioritize what we want to do well. So I think this is maybe not a groundbreaking finding, but sometimes I think it's important to hear it. But I
Fantastic.
really
Thank you.
recommend.
No, that's awesome. In the chat, I just put kind of our usual wrap links. So, should you want to work with us, we'd love to work with you. I mean, assuming you're nice and pleasant and, well behaved. So you could reach out to hello@Irrational Labs. For those of you that might not be hip to the world's greatest Substack teardowns, oh my gosh. Check out Kristen's Teardowns. That's our CEO at Kristen Substack. And then most of you are probably veteran members of our newsletter, but that's there as well as our LinkedIn page. We did drop all our LinkedIns in the chat. We do love to have friends. We're not super lonely, but we do like new friendly people. We are friendly people biased. We're not careless people. No, we value our 4,000 hours. Sometimes we don't show emotion because that's a good way to be efficient with our lives, but other times we had extra emotions so that people can have delightful experiences and really enjoy their time here on this planet and get a little bit extra. And now I'm trying to remember what the first book was because my memory palace has started crumbling on the first book. Oh, no, I already did
Careless
it.
People.
I already did it. I said we weren't careless people. I had it all. I had it all. Oh my gosh. Anyways, thank you everybody. Please have a wonderful rest of 2025. Reach out to us on LinkedIn, on the emails, on the interwebs. It was great seeing you all. Stay out of trouble. Be kind to everybody. And we'll see you in the new year. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.